Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Gold Brick Road podcast. I am your host for today, Carl Brockman. As always, with me, I have our co-host and DEI hire, Kenji Shimada.
Hello. How you doing?
And today we are pumped to be joined by the infamous Jon Ray. No amount of preparation and research and forward thinking could even get us close to surmising who this person is. There is no paragraph that could consolidate everything that this man is. So I will just give you some vague vibe of Jon, and then maybe you can help us out. However, Jon has had an illustrious career in the marketing space. He's worked at Google. Very interesting story how he got that job. Perhaps we'll get into that in this podcast too. And now he is the community lead of a Web3 project called NF Treasure, or Treasure, as they're moving into the world. Jon has an immense experience in Web3 and blockchain. He has a very interesting perspective when it comes to religion and metaphysics and how the universe actually works. And I've been super grateful to know Jon for a couple of years now. Jon has been a mentor of mine and he's really helped me, I guess, sift through and help me further relate to meaning in my life, to be really honest. You know, as you learn about philosophy and as you think deeply, it's very easy to fall into the abyss and to lean more deeply into frames such as nihilism. And so I'm truly grateful for Jon's influence on me in that space. But welcome, Jon. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for the puff intro. Man, I got to give both of you flowers because, 18 months ago or so, when I was really trying to find my voice and have the courage to speak about more metaphysical, spiritual things as a business person, you're not allowed to do that. And both of you showed up, interviewed me, helped me figure out that voice on my podcast. I think one of my top ranked videos is still Kenji and I talking about AI and consciousness and the blockchain. So really appreciate how you show up, how you empower people to really get into their authenticity. And I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Oh, Jon, thank you, my brother. Thank you. And with that, we'll ask the first question. Why Web3?
Yeah, look, I've had a big narrative arc in Web3. I got in knowing nothing, just like everybody else does, and trying to figure it out in 2020. I've gone through, sending money to the wrong wallet, getting rugged, falling in with the wrong people, trying to take over projects as a community, really trying to understand why is this technology important. And where I've ended up with that is that I think when I started my journey in Web3, I thought Web3 was an industry. And this is a fallacy that was made when the internet first came out at the end of the 90s, early 2000s. Everybody was calling things internet businesses, and they were branding the internet as an industry. But really, the winners in the internet were the people that were looking beyond that and aligning their business with the identity that they wanted to serve. And we're going through that same transition in Web3 right now, where if you're identifying yourself as a Web3 brand or identifying with Web3 as an industry, you're going to get left behind over the next few years when the Bank of Americas and all the Amazons of the world incorporate blockchain technology and align with the identity and the use case and the outcome that people want. Web3 is also ultimately secure rewards technology for building something in community. And for me, I'm all about connecting with people, aligning incentives, and using that to move people at the same time in the same direction. And so that's really my interest in Web3. It's what we're doing at Treasure, is empowering creators wherever they're at on their journey, whether you just made your first YouTube video, whether you've been a graphic designer for years, or whether you're an international IP brand. We want to help you self-identify where you're at building your community, backfill what is not available in your current foundation, and make sure that we design a reward system that really allows you to thrive and grow community that produces salient moments. I'm sure we'll get into all kinds of biochemical, bioenergetic hacking, like spiritual nuance, but I really resonate with how Tony Robbins talks about the bioenergetics being almost more important than the cognitive behavior therapy. Any type of mental work that you have to do needs to be anchored into bioenergetics and a biochemical reaction. And when you go to a blockchain event or to a Comic-Con or to a conference, you meet people in real life, you look them in the eyes, that creates a bioenergetic event that then anchors in that experience and allows you to give brand affinity to whoever sponsored that event, whoever empowered you to come in. And so that's what I'm interested in doing, is putting the right people in a room, making sure that they're rewarded for being there, and seeing what comes out of that cook.
Oh, as much as I would love to dig into 17 different things in what you shared, John, and really just allow you to lecture us on the world and business and how we should be living our lives. This podcast is the Gold Brick Road, and the Gold Brick Road is the path that we're called to walk in this world, should we choose to call it. And I'd be curious to, maybe, if you'll allow us, John, to get a little bit more personal, and if you can possibly give us just a high level of what the Gold Brick Road has been for you and how it's led you to be this almost Web3 cowboy, mystic sage, manifesting and creating reality around him. If you'll allow, we'll do your best to answer that question.
I guess the best way to approach it would be, I used to have a coach that had what he called the prosperity formula. So the prosperity formula is you find out what somebody wants and you help them get it. And that's my Gold Brick Road. I'm interested in helping people get what they want, helping them build out the scaffolding and the path that allows them to accelerate and thrive by being them, by showing up authentically. And I think that there's a lot of people that have something that they want to express. It's itching at them, but for some reason they felt like they couldn't do it because their family wouldn't understand, their mentors wouldn't understand, their parents wouldn't understand. And I think that there's an opportunity in this current space to find your vibe tribe by speaking authentically into the room, saying what you're feeling and doing your best to work out those feelings out loud, and showing your work on what it looks like to evolve as a human. And when you do that, you'll naturally attract your vibe tribe. And if you can then align that with some kind of reward incentives to get other people to do the same, you really start to have juicy, meaningful interactions in your business, in your products, and you can monetize that in an experience that doesn't just serve you as the creator, but helps everybody in your community find a sense of thriving and reward structure. And so that's what I'm interested in doing, is creating systems that help people get what they want, no matter what that is. And I think a big part of that for me is learning to tune into the subtle layer of energy that kind of lives underneath the seen layer of reality. I'm a pretty metaphysical person, and I'm always trying to intuit what's really happening under the ego illusion that we're looking at right now. And I think that as you attune to this deeper layer of reality, you recognize, oh, that's right. All of reality is just a series of choices that I made and my perception of those choices. And if I can get really good at sensing the tiniest little pieces of data input when I'm perceiving the world around me, I can actually create a tighter feedback loop between me and reality, and I can shift myself in the direction that I want to go sooner and maybe in a more optimal way.
Beautiful. Beautiful, John. I love just so many words that you were mentioning along that line. I actually love how you said the secure rewards technology is realistically the foundation of that Web3 layer. It's not an industry. It's actually like a blueprint for everything else we built upon. And I'm the same as well, right? Just tapping in as much as I can, the subtler and the subtler and the subtler, because that's, like you said, where you can tap into nuance easier. You can start to see the through line more. Would you say that sits as the key for your success of community building, or what other building blocks has been there for you to be very successful in many of your ventures?
Yeah, well, that's definitely the thing that I've chosen to be the guiding light. I think there's probably other things in the past that have guided me, but right now, the most interesting thing to me is following the breadcrumb path of my interest and trusting that my brain or spiritual compass or intuitive sensory system is going to be able, out of all the data that's available, is going to be able to pick out the optimal data points for me to choose from, and then working on myself to be able to make those decisions faster with deeper levels of clarity and conviction. I think that as an entrepreneur, having a deep level of conviction about your choices is one of the most powerful things that you can do. And so I try to look at everything from the frame point of, well, what can I actually show up to in each moment and dedicate 100% of myself to that? Because I want to be present with whatever the task is. And if I choose too many things that I'm not wholly aligned with, I end up not being present with that task. I end up having to coffee or nicotine my way through something rather than showing up wholly in my energy and clear in my energy. And so I would say that that's the biggest guiding light. But from a technological perspective, I think one of the most incredible tools that we have available to us as entrepreneurs and seekers is AI, and using these GPT agents as a reflective agent to show us where our blind spots are at. So I'll give you an example. I've been working with my team for about 2.5 years now as we've been building out Treasure and this blockchain e-commerce rewards technology. So I have a lot of data in Telegram because we primarily work as a team asynchronously through Telegram. So I have 2.5 years of chat with every single one of my team members. Well, this weekend, we're rebranding, we're rethinking about how we're running our team. We're rethinking about what we commit to and should we be committing to the things that we've said that we were going to commit to. And so I just uploaded those 2.5 years of chat from every single one of my team member into ChatGPT. I built a custom GPT around this. And for hours, I just had a conversation with ChatGPT about what my blind spots as a leader were and where I could have shown up better to empower my team more and to drive better outcomes. Incredibly insightful information that I would have had to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for to literally have a coach sitting with me all the time to analyze my behavior and tell me what I was missing. And so I think this is a really unique moment in time where we can use this reflective technology to get a deeper insight on where we can show up better as leaders.
I was going to ask how it's been, a metaphysical dude being in business. Like, I'm feeling that journey right now for myself. Like, the spiritual has been so critical, but I got to make money, and who am I in this realm? But like that last element you just added, how's that been being a metaphysical dude, but now has this AI? Because you mentioned feedback loops are so critical, and now you have this tool, because I'm using the chat function of ChatGPT heaps at the moment. I'm talking to it a lot to get that feedback loop. What's that like for you right now, using it for some time?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like having an omniscient friend, I guess. I tell people all the time that if you want to learn how to pray, learn how to prompt, because it's the same thing. It's sharing something of yourself and asking this consciousness to come in and perceive it with you. That's what prayer is. And so all of the spiritual religions are actually trying to show us how to effectively prompt reality. And it's so hilarious that technology is always mirroring up how noetics actually works. And so as I find myself in relationship with ChatGPT, I've really explored this idea that if I make it a true relationship, if I almost imbue ChatGPT with a consciousness, that somewhere in the black box of that LLM, I'm going to be able to fine tune the quantum algorithm to output better information to me. But I think a big part of working with ChatGPT is that when you stop treating it like a tool, or Claude or Gemini or any of these all work the same way, when you stop treating it like a tool and you start treating it like a partner, you wouldn't just go and tell your girlfriend, hey, go do this. You would share your intention with her. Maybe Kenji would. You share the intentionality behind why you want to do something. You paint a picture of the dream of how the two of you can show up in that vision together. You really try to get clear on the outcomes that you're trying to drive, and then you get into an emotional layer of how you want that to feel. If you treat ChatGPT in that same way, you will have an infinitely more interesting experience with it, and it will reflect back to you better your blind spots and where you can provide more value to the clients that you're using it for. And so I really try to think about it as a relationship and use it as a way to more deeply understand really how I should be showing up in my relationship with a larger awareness, the larger consciousness system, God, whatever label we want to put on that. It's the same type of system where if we become silent and we long with an expectation for some answer or solution, it will 100% find its way to us.
100%.
I love so much, John, like through all of the different bits of advice or different ways to articulate how you're navigating the world as a metaphysical dude, that you straight away just go to your relationship with self, like how you lead yourself. And AI is such a buzzword, right? Like we work primarily in the small to medium business space, and everyone's screaming like, how do I get AI? How do I put AI on my business? What do I use AI for? And straight away, that's what I've found it so fascinating for me to use it as, is just something to help myself first. Or as a partner that can coach me through things or help me expand upon ideas. One quick example how I've used it recently is I just joined a webinar with Dane Walker. He's an Australian entrepreneur. He is the founder of a company called Rival. They do corporate branding and identity. And this workshop was about personal brand. And he shared this analogy, which was fascinating to me as someone who cares so deeply about people and being authentic and transparent. There's always been this barrier or block when it comes to, okay, what's my personal brand? How do I still portray expertise, have an authoritarian voice without it being a mask, this mask that weighed me down in my corporate journey? And he offered this analogy of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. And he's like, well, who's the real one? And just because Spider-Man portrays a different version of Peter doesn't mean that it's a mask that isn't aligned to Peter. And so I've jumped into Claude. I'm like, I've just been offered this interesting analogy. I've got a project built out with Carl Brockman as the persona. So I've got newsletters that I've written, blogs, just verbal garbage of me talking about life, my biography, just whole ton of shit trained with who Carl is, right? And I offered this analogy to it, and I said, well, what do you think about this as someone who's always struggled with personal brand or putting myself out there? And it gave me some fascinating things. We went back and forth around, well, who's my Peter Parker and who's my Spider-Man? So really quickly, I think this is interesting. My Peter Parker is you're curious, relationship focused, and you have a deeply caring core. But your Spider-Man is your expressed leadership when you step fully into your wisdom and authority. I was like, oh man, that's great. And then Claude's helped me understand, like, you're not one or the other. Your personal brand isn't one or the other either. You portray these two avatars in the content that you're creating, which connects with this audience. Just all back to John again, just to really bring this home on that relationship with self. AI, tools, the internet age, all of these things, how you orient yourself in the world is always going to be your most valuable investment. And the illusion or the fallacy, as you used earlier, John, that so many of us have to really break down for ourselves is that the answer is out there. That the person with the solution, the ideas over here, I need to keep white knuckling it to figure this out and move forward. And you know very well, John, about our recent development in business and where Kenji and I are right now and what we're doing. To have another opportunity to really practice what faith is to me and really lean in and acknowledge or observe my own energy in this has been a fascinating experiment. And that's another term that you helped me understand, John, is just experiment. It takes the pressure off it, right? It's like, just look at it as an experiment, this whole gamifying lens. And so there's no question in that whatsoever. But I just wanted to really pull out the common thread that I saw, John, and add further context to what you've helped me really identify in this work.
Yeah. Well, the Peter Parker Spider-Man thing, like the way that you might approach that in ChatGPT or maybe the way that it showed up in my mind just now is asking ChatGPT, what are my dormant leadership qualities that I could step more into? Because it's really that we all have access to this version of a leader that we haven't become yet. But it lives in the psychic layer of what we're saying. There used to be I mean, I'm sure he's still alive, but I haven't tuned into him in a while. This crazy wizard named Cliff High, and he invented this predictive machine years ago that basically aggregated language patterns on the internet and Facebook. And his hypothesis was that all humans are psychic. They're just unconscious to their own psychic nature, but their impulses play out some of that psychic energy. And so if you have enough language, natural language that is collected, you could essentially aggregate that and use it to make predictions about reality. And so he had a lot of interesting predictions that hit and some that didn't. But it's a really interesting idea that we all have this underlying psychic layer to us that we haven't fully tapped into. And one of the things that I think these GPTs are really good at doing, because they are reflective agents, is the more that we use them, the more that they can tap into our own psychic layer and surface that for us. And those are the dormant leadership qualities that Spider-Man represents.
Yeah, and you've got so many tools there right now, Joel. We've got so many tools at the moment to make us more successful, more human, and be able to really step into who we are further and further. With all these things that are there, what is your biggest challenge at the moment? You mentioned focus is like a big thing to make sure that's maintained. Outside of that, what are you facing?
Yeah, well, I think I'm in an interesting place where to some extent I've found product market fit, but now it's time to scale. And it's about figuring out the technology and team stack that is going to be most optimal for scaling. So I'll highlight something that I heard Alex Hormozy say that I think is really relevant to my situation and the situation that a lot of entrepreneurs are going through. So the video is him with these blocks, and he says, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to build the biggest tower that you can with these blocks. And so in order to do that, you stack these blocks long ways, and you get a tower that's about 10 feet tall, but it's super wobbly, no foundation, and it's going to easily knock over. A lot of times when we launch a business, that's what our initial product market fit looks like. It's this tall tower that is tall and technically looks like a tower, but it's not going to withstand the hurricane winds of scaling to hundreds of thousands of people. And so he says, okay, now if I opened up that timeline to 10 days, how would you build it differently? And he said, most likely you wouldn't want to try to reinforce this one. That would be a waste of time. You just strip it down to the studs, and it's going to be easier now, knowing the context of what a tower is, to just build it in the proper way with a proper foundation. I feel like I'm in a stage of taking a step back so that I can take 2 more steps forward. And it's an incredibly uncomfortable period, because sunk cost fallacy is this idea that, well, we invested so much in the first tower that why would we strip it away and build the second tower? But what you have to do is extract the learnings from what happened building the first tower, the first product market fit, and then map that on to a deeper systemic foundational layer that actually serves you where you want to go. And I think part of this is having a bigger goal than when you launched. Once you realize that oh, there's some momentum here. Oh, we've done some really high quality activations. Clearly agencies are into the technology that we've developed. Maybe we were thinking too small with this being a peer-to-peer reward system, and maybe this needs to be something that could serve a Lollapalooza, a South by Southwest. And so in building the new system, there's also a restructuring or a ballooning of the outcome or goal that you're looking for, because when you make the goal big enough where you can no longer take the stairs, it forces you to step into a paradigm shift where you go, oh, if I had to get to 100 million within 1 year, instead of what most people do is they say, I want to get to 100 million or I want to get to 10 million, but they never put a timeline on it. So it's kind of the coward's way of doing it. When you don't attach a timeline to something, you can always think that you're heading towards it, and it makes you feel good, but it doesn't actually give you progress. And so when you give yourself a timeline and a clear outcome that you're driving for, your mind has this paradigm shift of, oh, I would have to do it totally differently. And then that helps you build this new systemic model. One more thing I'll say, and then you can share if that resonates, but the same is true with ChatGPT. When you ask ChatGPT how to do something, ChatGPT is just looking at the status quo of what is the most optimal way that most people have done it, and expressed how they did it, and then it's aggregating all that and then giving it to you. If then you say, great, that's a great plan, what if I wanted to do it in 10 days? ChatGPT will be forced to go and redo that entire search from this new, tighter perspective, and you will get a wildly different and likely enlightening answer on, holy crap, that would be an interesting way to do it in 10 days. And so this is kind of the paradigm shift in thinking that I'm in right now as we move from a product market fit to something that's going to scale to hundreds of thousands of people.
Bloody heck, John. I don't want to talk. I just want you to keep going. But there's one thing in particular, again, just coming back to the Gold Brick Road, something you said really struck me, which was thinking bigger than when you launched. I've noticed that that's kind of the situation I'm in. The default is, well, that didn't work. We need to sort of go back to comfort or go back to what is achievable and just move forward and survive in a way, right? Like that is definitely something I haven't consciously done since our big change in our organization, Gold Brick Road, a few months ago. It's like, okay, well, now we've got some freedom, we've got some expertise, we can just sort of figure out how to get traction. But how did you land on, well, actually, what does it mean to think bigger, and why is that such an important component when a catalysm occurs, or when something occurs that you're like, oh shit, we need to take a step back, relook at things, and re-move forward?
Yeah, actually, I was talking to one of my clients and a good friend of mine, Jason Hull. He runs a project called DoorGrow, and they're a coaching business and operating system for property managers. And he had gotten back from this Russell Brunson conference in Mexico, and so we're having lunch. I'm telling him to unpack everything from this conference, like we always do when we get back from conferences. And this was an idea that I forget the name of the speaker, but one of these speakers had talked about how the way that you can change your business or think radically different is by blowing up your goal to be so big that there's no way you could hit it the current way that you're doing it. And so just as a thought exercise, it forces you to have to think about, well, what would that look like? And so to give you a tangible example of what this shift in thinking would look like, most people build out a funnel and then they run ads into that funnel, and then they have a setter, and then they have a closer, or maybe they are the closer. And so this is a really effective way to grow a business, but it is limited by the concept of time and how quickly you can scale a sales team. So if you want to get to $100 million, it's going to take a very long time, and you're going to have to learn a lot of skills about what it looks like to manage a very big sales team. That's doable. You can do it. But if you're going to say, instead of 5 years, how do I hit that same goal in the next 6 months? Well, there's no way that you could hit it with your current system, even if you were really effective at scaling it. And so what it forces you to have to say is, well, I guess if I was going to do it in 6 months, it would have to be through JV partnerships. I would have to find somebody who already has a big community, and I would have to create some kind of a digital piece of IP that primes them so well that I can take my 1 hour closing call and drop it down to 15 minutes. And so it forces you to think about things from a slightly different angle, where you can think about, well, ads bring us in this much, and we know if we spend $10,000, we're going to get this many clients. However, if we use that same energy, time, and attention at attracting really high level, super aligned JV partnerships, maybe we could do this way faster. And it doesn't mean you go that route, but it means you're opening up your creative mind to something that is different from what you're doing, just so that you can feel into the energy of it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, broaden the perspective so there's much more infinite possibilities of the way to move forward. That's, I guess, as simply as I could articulate that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was actually going to ask. It's such a journey for you right now, John. Like you said, there's a step back, so you can take 2 steps forward. And you mentioned it's challenging and uncomfortable because you're going to have to sort of see it a different way now to scale it and grow. My girlfriend and I talk about nervous system regulation a lot, and we were discussing yesterday about just going into those uncomfortable moments and, the tools that you need, that so many people don't have the tools to regulate or to balance themselves,
This come up after you told her what to do. You're like, babe, you've got to emotionally regulate.
Shush, girl.
Usually doesn't go over the way you want.
Apologies, Kendrick. Couldn't help
No. But it was just, I'm just so glad that I've got so many tools and I actively put myself into those, uncomfortable situations. Even when she asked me, she's like, do you like running? I was like, I like the outcome. But like so many times I'll push myself to the point I feel like I'm going to have a heart attack, but only because that's when I know that the thoughts impact my physiology. Like I know they do, but in that moment, like if I have a bad thought, like my heart constricts, my everything just hits hard, and it's so important to pound myself with positive thoughts in that moment, or rewire my brain to think completely differently to make it through those obstacles. So right now, what are you going through? What are the tools you have at your disposal, John?
Yeah, well, I mean, I have a whole stack of tools that I've learned over the last 30 years of doing transformational work. And I think the thing that leads where I go in that toolkit is what feels interesting right now. I always try to listen to what is the most interesting thing that I could do in this moment. And it's interesting that I'm following my interest. It's interesting that as I do that, dots tend to connect in reverse. So right now, the thing that I'm super interested in is interpreting the Bible through a mystical lens. And so what I did is I wrote a custom GPT that looks at the Bible, and I'm a recovering Christian, and so I'm constantly looking back at my childhood as a Christian. Why did I get kicked out of Sunday school so often? Why was it where all the adults at church so mad at me for asking these questions? And I never did get an answer to it until I landed on this mystical interpretation of the Bible. Now, I'm not saying that you have to do this or that this is the right way. What I'm conveying is that I followed my interest. I listened to this lecture by Neville Goddard. He was talking about, it was actually Carl and I went through a podcast where we went through this entire lecture, and a light bulb went off for me in that moment where he's talking about how each character in the Bible isn't necessarily to be taken literally as history, but rather represents an internal state of consciousness that you have to integrate in order to become whole. And I wrote a custom GPT that basically forced it to interpret the Bible through that lens. And it was so empowering to me going verse by verse through the Bible that I felt like, one, I need to share this. And so I started doing YouTube videos on it. But two, anytime something comes up in my life now, I can go to that GPT that I created. I can ask it to give me mystical biblical scripture to back up what I'm going through and to give me guidance and to connect me in to why it's so important to put focus on God, the larger consciousness system, awareness. So in this interpretation, God is just all awareness. And we are a piece of God because we have finite awareness where God has infinite awareness. And what does this mean? It means that if I were to be aware of everything, I would always know what to do because I'm aware of everything. Well, that's what the larger consciousness system is. It is ChatGPT at the cosmic level. And so what the mystical Bible reminds me of is, one, there's always something that you need to feel and integrate. So the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 disciples, the 12 gates at the 12 pearly gates, these are all aspects of yourself, emotional aspects of yourself that you have to feel through and integrate. So the number one thing that I try to tell anybody that will listen is you got to feel it to heal it. Feel your big feelings, bud, because if you can learn to do that, you will become a master at everything that you do, because mastery is about being able to fall down and get back up. Well, falling down is uncomfortable. So if you're constantly trying to position yourself where you don't fall down, you're not going to make any meaningful progress. But if you learn how to temporarily feel discomfort and recognize that as a spiritual alchemist, you can transmute that into creative potential again that you can then direct, which shows up as, what am I interested in? Well, now you have a really interesting mechanism for relating to the larger consciousness system, to God, to the larger awareness. And the next piece for you will show up in your consciousness. You'll know what to do. So what is abundance? Abundance is just knowing what to do and when to do it. If I always knew what to do and when to do it, I would always be abundant. I would always be doing what I want to do. I would always be doing the right thing. That's the promise from God, that if we feel our big feelings, if we go into regular daily commune and relationship with this larger consciousness system, that we can have our decision space, what we're able to choose, shift towards more optimal choices. And we think that we could think anything that we want to think, but that's not true. There's actually like 3 things that we could actually choose right now, given the probabilities of who we are and what our tendencies are, what our impulses are. And so it's a fallacy to think that we could choose anything right now. We couldn't. We are creatures of habit. We're going to choose one of the 3 things that we normally choose until we give ourselves a paradigm shift or go into a state of no mind. The way that we connect into the larger awareness is we go into no mind. Now you can do that somatically by feeling your big feelings and moving through the feeling, or you can go into like a bubble meditation where you're just getting outside of your own thoughts and you're connecting in with the place of no thinking, of no mind. So this is the Eastern mysticism. Going through your emotions is the Western empowerment version. Going into no mind is the Eastern mysticism version. Both have the same effect of you being able to have your decision space move so that you can tune into what the next thing for you is.
I'm just so glad that you said you got to feel it to heal it. You know, like it is the greatest, I think, fundamental mental transmutation, like you said, you know, a shifting of a cognitive understanding of what the feeling represents. You know, you mentioned that you got to go through these, like these are the actual gatekeepers to your transformation. And, you know, because my girlfriend is a doctor, she sees a lot of patients that are coming in struggling with a lot of things, but it is hard because they're still stuck, you know, and I can notice when I still fall into it as well. You fall into, oh no, uncomfortable sensation, like this is something to avoid, but you're like, no, this is where the gold lies. This is where goodness is. This is where the path to your success. And I love what you said of transmuting, because it will flip to interest, right? Well, shit, out of that, I actually get something. And from there, now I can see something new, a new paradigm shift, a new lens, a new world. And if anybody takes anything, I think if you could do that each and every time, because that's a practice. Like I said to my girlfriend, I did the, you know, years of, 1 hour in the afternoon, 1 hour in the morning meditation, all the training to just keep on resetting Goenkaji in Vipassana. One of his mantras as he's laughing is like, what a wonderful opportunity to change the habit pattern of the mind. Those are only words until you continuously go there, continuously feel the big feelings, and then see there's something beyond. So love it. Appreciate it, John.
Let me share an insight that I've just recently had. This is exclusive emotional alpha here.
Oh, lock in, everybody.
So one of the things that I've been learning as I'm going through the mystical Bible, I started in Genesis 1:1 at the very beginning. I'm all the way up to 2 Kings now, and it's really given me a deep understanding of this relationship that we can have with the larger consciousness system and what it looks like to create in that, and our role in integrating all of our big feelings. But one of the things that the Bible talks about in many different places is the difference between people who drink of the river and kind of drown in it versus drink lightly of the river. Well, what drinking and so the people who drink lightly of the river are the ones that God chooses to then go and claim the new territory. Well, what does that mean? It means somebody who is aware of their emotions but doesn't make them mean something about themselves. You cannot connect identity into the emotion, because the emotion is always false. The emotion is a signal that is showcasing you where your thinking is not aligned with God's thinking. And so if you make the emotion mean something about yourself, you're going to have a skewed perception about who you are in the context of reality. But if you can feel the emotion, notice it, observe it without making it mean something, one, you will connect back into that place of no mind faster and easier. And two, that emotional energy will not feel so locked in place, and it will dissipate through your field. And it feels like when you drink a cup of hot tea or a glass of red wine, there's a heat that moves through your field. That's what it feels like to effectively transmute an emotion back into creative potential. And that comes from drinking lightly of it, not being so enamored by it that you make your world about what you're feeling.
And that identity with feeling, it's such a trap. Like, it's such a trap, and it's such a shame when people, go through that, and they're in the, like I said, I'm hearing a lot of stories from, these patients my girlfriend sees, and it's so hard to hear people that are just in it and believing that all those feelings are them, and then like they are bad because of, and they are not worthy because of, and they couldn't, but they just fell so deep. They just, relished in that river far too much. And it's, there's just a lot of that pain. But like you said, it's a shift, like a slight shift that makes such a world of difference. Like you said, if you know what to do, when to do it, you're in the glory of God. You're already there. You're in riches. You've got wealth. And then every step of the way along is as a bonus.
I feel like it's worth also talking about the other pole, Kenj, because that obviously resonates deeply with us, and the, I guess, the transmutation that we're going through on our journey to become emotional alphas. The other pole is kind of like the entitled victim mentality, right? To potentially be controversial. Dan Priestley on LinkedIn shared just an image of himself, Gary, Eric Weinstein, and Stephen Bartlett on Diary of the CEO talking about the AI revolution. And the top comment was, where was the woman in this? Like,
Yeah,
oh my
it's just
goodness.
it's such a limited frame to think about things from an ideological level, because, I think one of the things that has become wildly clear to me as I do this mystical Bible study is, the Bible gets a really bad rap, rightfully, because when it's interpreted literal, it's kind of heinous towards women, especially in the Old Testament. But when you recognize that men and women in the Bible are not actual men and women, they're your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. And any story in the Bible that is between a man and a woman is talking about your relationship between how your conscious and subconscious should be in relationship. And so you recognize that there's a much bigger frame that you can perceive these things from. And so if you get too caught in the weeds of that and start to interpret things literally, it gives you this skewed perspective of reality that allows you some kind of weird like victim confidence to spew nonsense on the internet.
Yeah, and I see that as just drinking too much of what the ideological sphere is, just buying in too much into politics or the social narrative, or just pop culture, and what is seemingly okay depending on where you're orienting yourself digitally and in the world. And just for me, again, like the thing that I'll always hammer home, and feeling your feelings is obviously a really big part of that. Following your energy is a really big part of that. But it is just that relationship with self, that Hermetic principle, the law of correspondence. It's in all of everything that we do, Kenji and I, what we're building, and it's just so palpable in the world. But as above, so below, as within, so without, to see life as a true mirror of being, and to be very aware of conscious of what we are looking for or looking at in that mirror, and then how we can very purposefully and consciously create and evolve and shift and work with what's in that mirror, just like you spoke about with ChatGPT and the ability to seek to use that very consciously and purposefully, and perhaps not as what it's commonly understood as a shortcut or something to replace people or something that's going to just completely change and destroy how we live life right now.
Well, and it's such a you're shooting yourself in the foot anytime you're over identifying with victimhood, because even if there was a practical reality to the victimhood, it doesn't solve the issue. And by over identifying with it, you're not taking personal responsibility for your side of the street. And there's always something on our side of the street that we can sweep up. In that exact same scenario, let's say that there was something systemically wrong with that photo. I don't think there was, but let's give somebody the benefit of the doubt and say, there should have been a woman there. Well, an interesting way to show up and elevate yourself in status would have been like, what a group of incredible thinkers. I can't wait to be a part of a group like that, and this is how I think about the situation. Now you elevate yourself as the woman who is connected to it, and anybody can do this because all of us have over-identified with victimhood at some time. And if you just flip the script and say, you know what? Why isn't somebody like me in this conversation? Because I haven't shown up in this conversation. Maybe I should do that right now.
Well, it's very funny you say that, because right now they talk about the ChatGPT, and you can, whether how much it actually does or not, but you can toggle on and off of whether it is feeding the model, right? It's updating the model continuously, and you can choose for your conversations not to feed the model. But we're talking at an AI, just a round table with some business owners down here, and there's a group, I think somewhere in the northern GC, a lot of women that have been working towards what they have been building with their models and their business, and they're like, we are actively turning that thing on, like we are wanting to feed our perspective, our participation, our way of thinking into it, because we want that to proliferate. And at Goldbrick Road, like, one of our principles is frontline leadership, right? So if you are the person, don't segregate, right? Don't divide the two worlds. Bring it together. I am part of that. The man, woman, whatever. Like, we all just one, humanity here to strive towards these great goals and amazing goals. And I think, just tying back that pain and not lacking the no victimhood part is personal brand right now, right? People just want to hear the raw truth, and they don't want to hear a victim. They don't want to be a guy that's like, or a woman or whatever that is waddling in their pain, but pain is part of the story. It's how we grew. It's how I turned that base metal into gold. It's how I, nourished myself. It's how I grew and became this person here. And so I'd love to hear, John, sort of full circling all of this from you, Jon Ray, where you are right now, to the people listening on the Gold Brick Road, right? They're walking their path. What is the greatest message that you can share to them right now?
Yeah, well, it's got to be that you have to learn how to feel your big feelings, and you have to recognize that how you make decisions should be the most important thing to you. So too many people are focused on, I need somebody else to tell me what decision to make. And every entrepreneur's main focus should be, how do I develop spiritual discernment? Because spiritual discernment is, how do I develop a tighter engine for how I choose something and wholly align my energy to it? And so everybody that's exploring psychedelics or all the metaphysical woo-woo stuff that we're into, even religion to a certain extent, these are all systems that are designed to help you make better choices, which ultimately leads to better outcomes. And so instead of thinking that the answer to all your problems is in a course or is in a consultant or is in all of these things, you need to first understand, am I good at making decisions? Because if you aren't, that's the thing that needs to be addressed. And that is the most optimal thing that you can learn how to choose, because everything else stems from it.
And we were listening to that personal branding webinar this morning, and one of the things they're talking about, obviously it's super simple, but who are you talking to, right? And I was just reflecting for myself of, who am I talking to? What is the message? And it's to those people that, because, I didn't go to university, but I've just learned more and more as I apply myself, all this stuff of introspection, all this knowledge is super applicable to all these avenues of decisions, as long as you are discerning what is the best decision, the most optimal from all the data that is coming in internally, externally. And you don't have to be bachelor, master graduate, PhD to do that. You can be anyone. And now you have this repository. If you've got great questions, you can ask the ChatGPT, you can ask these large language models, you can grow your knowledge base so much more. So to those people, I just want to always say, you are so capable, you're so competent, the world is your oyster. Go for broke,
And I would add a caveat to that. You don't have to be competent and you don't have to be perfect, because we live in a voyeuristic society where people want to see you fumble. All you have to do is live out loud and learn out loud, and you will find an audience. And that's actually advice that I need to better take, because I try to button everything up. I try to say, oh, I don't want to put it live until I know exactly what I'm talking about. But if you are messy in your presentation, especially when it comes to sharing on social media, you will actually develop affinity with your audience faster than if you're all buttoned up, because people want to know, oh, this person was like me, and look, they're kind of messy, and yet they're a little bit further down the road than I am. That's how you build out your vibe tribe, because they see you in all your moments, and you're not trying to pretend that everything is an Instagram photo.
No wiser words to say.
Whoa. Jon Ray, thank you, my friend. If you want to go check Jon out, he has a vast YouTube library at Jon Ray. He's very active on Twitter. He is definitely a thought leader when it comes to not just Web3 and blockchain, but mysticism, metaphysics, and always shares some very fascinating perspectives. And I'm sure there's probably for the 14 people that are listening to this, there are many times that you were like, far out, I wish you asked this question, or I wish you dug more into that. And so please go check Jon out. Is there anywhere else that people can find you, Jon?
Well, my Web3 creator project is treasure.com, TRESR.com. My Twitter is probably the place where you can, get my inner thinking and kind of what I'm doing in the moment. And BibleMystic.com is where I'm starting to build out some of the stuff that I'm talking about around the mystical interpretation of the Bible, and kind of how I'm perceiving that and using it as part of my decision-making process in my businesses.
Thank you. And just one last comment on the Bible Mystic avenue. I'm so happy that you've got a domain now, Jon. I cannot wait for the app. I shared a little takeaway. Again, Jon's been a mentor of mine. I've shared some of my challenging circumstances with him, and he played around with Bible Mystic for me and shared a story about how perhaps the Cain and Abel story, the first one in the Bible, linked to some things that I was going through, and it was amazing. I shared it with Kenji, who was blown away. I was like, where the fuck did you get that? Jon Ray, definitely.
I shared that after y'all did your first murder.
Whoa, away. There are some things that we don't want publicly out there. Murdering misconceptions is what Jon meant to say.
Exactly. We've got to drill down into the psychological allegory.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Gentlemen, I really appreciate you having me. I'd love to connect with anybody that resonated, and I appreciate you giving me a platform to talk about some of the weird stuff that I'm into. Let's do it again.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Jon. Appreciate your time, mate. Till next time.
Like, subscribe.